Some of you are wondering where Mrs. Kapanka makes those videos she's sharing with her preschool called Mrs. Kapanka's Cozy Little Cabin. Well, it's actually in our house. But you guys know we don't live in a log cabin. We live in a plain house in a plain neighborhood. But I always wanted a log cabin. But our house wasn't a log cabin. The basement was just an unfinished room. I got the idea, I wonder if I could make it look like a log cabin down there. So I kept thinking, where could I get some logs? I kept thinking for over a year. And that's where this story actually ties into Calvary Christian Schools. We came to Calvary Christian in the year 2000. The school building was constructed in 1998 through 1999. And it was in that time period that some donors thought they'd help the school get a playground. How? The Muskegon Mall, which was down by the Frohenthal Theater in downtown Muskegon, was being closed. It's not there anymore. But your parents and your grandparents might remember it. And inside that mall there was a McDonald's. And it had a McDonald's playland. You know, the kind with the slides and the ramps and all the tubes, so that if you bump your head on it, it doesn't hurt. That donor bought that playland, and they tore it apart in one night. And they took it out to the property where the school was being built, and they put it out in the woods right behind the current playground, because they knew that's where the playground was going to go. The only problem was they didn't have any instructions on how to put it back together, and it was very complicated. The main project, the school building, was getting built and it got finished, but out back, when we moved into that school, there was no playground and no way to know how to put that McDonald's playground back together. The kids are playful though. They went out in the woods, they hauled out all the blue tubes, and every time we had recess, they had balls and everything else to play, but the main thing the kids played with was these blue tubes. They had sword fights and battles and wars, and they played baseball with them. And then the bell would ring and they'd run in, and all the blue tubes would be left out there. It became quite a mess. There were hundreds of blue tubes, and they were much longer than this. They were like 8 feet long. The people that had to mow the lawn and take care of the property got tired of picking up those blue tubes all the time, and sometimes the wind would blow all the way over to where the barn is, and the barn wasn't even there yet. One day I went out in the back of the school and I saw that dumpster back by the back door of the gym. That dumpster was full, packed full of blue tubes. There wasn't any place to put the garbage. So I asked Mr. Wilson, who is in charge of that, "Hey, do you care if I take those blue tubes?" He said, "Take them. I'd be happy for you to take them." So I loaded up in my van. It took 2 trips to get all those blue tubes home. And you can imagine Mrs. Kapanka and my 3 daughters, who still lived here at the time, said, "Daddy, what are you going to do with all those tubes?" I said, "Just wait. You'll see." And at Christmas break, I figured out a way to stretch all those blue tubes out just a little bit to make them a little bit bigger. And they had been so battered up by the kids playing with them that I thought maybe they were ruined. But I took a blowtorch and I just started torching these blue tubes. And every time I got to all the nicks that the kids put in them, they kind of melted and looked gnarly, which I knew was perfect, because the imperfections of the tubes were exactly what I needed to make the logs look perfect. Because logs aren't perfect. They've got knot holes and scratches, and all the imperfections that were in the blue tubes were perfect. All those imperfections became all these knots. Because you see, these blue tubes are these logs behind me. When I first put them up, my daughters came down and said, "Dad, what are you doing? That looks crazy. It looks like a Smurf house." And it did, because it was all blue. I said, "Just wait. You'll see." Is there something you don't know? When I first started teaching, I taught English and literature and drama, and I was in charge of all the school plays. This is a long time ago, over 30 years ago. And I had to build all the sets, paint all the scenery. I had help, of course, but I had to do a lot of that work. And I was convinced that I could paint that blue basement to look like logs. And do you know where I got the color? Do you know that log cabin that you pass on the way to school on Kendra? I thought, that's a nice color for a log cabin. It wasn't too dark, and I didn't want this to be too dark because it's a basement. So I matched that color, got some paint, got some darker color to kind of blend in and make it look imperfect. And I used a darker color to make all the knots. Then I put some plaster between the logs for the chinking that log cabins have. Then the posts that hold up the floors, the second floor, I took more of these tubes and I put them around the poles, and I put that spray foam that you put in to insulate between cracks, and I painted all over that with gloves on and smeared it, and the foam kind of expanded and made it look like bark. And then I painted that. And before you know it, the basement looked like a log cabin. The only problem was it looked like an empty log cabin. You kind of have to decorate it to look like a log cabin. So I thought about all the log cabins that I had been in, and they kind of looked like a place that people had gone hunting and they just left their things hanging on the wall. It looked like a place that families had spent vacation and they put up little souvenirs and then left them there for the next summer. I've been in people's cottages and in cabins that they feel like a museum because the whole family history is around that place. And that's what I wanted this basement to be. I had a whole bunch of things in boxes, things that I had when I was a kid, toys and trucks. That fire truck I got when I was 3 years old, because I like to keep old things. Not because we live in the past, but old things remind us that we're actually in a continuum of time. It gives us a sense of continuity. It helps us to believe in the future when we see that future is connected to the past. So when we're going through tough times like we are right now, I can tell you that just as God was faithful in the past, He's faithful in the present, and He will be faithful in the future. And just like God can use messed up things that really belong in a trash bin, but He can get an idea and make something useful out of it. And that's what I hope you'll do in the time that we have at home in these next few weeks. Do something useful, and I don't just mean the assignments that your teachers might give you. I mean, think of something to do. Think of ways to make something out of nothing. Because I guarantee that when you're older, looking back, those things will probably mean a whole lot more to you than whatever we learn from books and lesson plans. Those things are important. But the things that you're going to remember from this time in your home are probably not those things. I hope that you remember some of the things that Mrs. Kapanka is talking to you about in that cozy little cabin. But I never dreamt that we would be using it because of the circumstances that we're in right now as a school. Some people call it cabin fever when you've been in your house for a long, long time. And by the time this is over, we'll probably all feel like we've survived cabin fever and whatever else is going on outside. But we're doing it together, and we're going to make it. We're going to trust in God. And even though Mrs. Kapanka's cozy little cabin is for preschoolers, I know by how many people are commenting on it that a whole lot of other people are watching it besides that preschool. So I hope you don't mind that I took some time to tell you how this log cabin came about, and that in a way this really is a part of Calvary Christian Schools. These logs were out back by the playground for a couple of years before I put them to use down here.